What if I told you that one of the creepiest, most iconic locations in gaming history wasn't entirely fictional? What if the eerie, fog-filled town of Silent Hill was inspired by a real place? Well, it was, and that place is Centralia, Pennsylvania. Imagine a town that was once thriving, but is now a ghost town, filled with abandoned streets, crumbling buildings, and smoke rising from the ground. Sounds familiar, right? That's because this real-life location became the blueprint for the horror game Silent Hill. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the real story of Centralia, a town that's been burning underground for over 60 years. We'll explore its rise as a booming coal mining town, the disaster that turned it into a smouldering wasteland, and the eerie similarities that connect it to the world of Silent Hill. And trust me, the real story is just as haunting as the game. Stick around, because by the end you'll see how Centralia's tragic history inspired one of the scariest settings in gaming. Plus, we'll talk about what's happened to Centralia since then and why it continues to capture the imagination of horror fans worldwide. Ready to get spooked? Let's dive into the chilling history of Centralia, Pennsylvania, and its ties to Silent Hill. Before Centralia became a ghost town and an inspiration for horror games, it was a bustling place with a rich history. Centralia was founded in the mid-1800s during America's coal mining boom. Like many towns in Pennsylvania's coal region, Centralia grew around the demand for anthracite coal, a type of coal that was highly sought after for its heat and energy production. The town was built directly over one of the richest coal deposits in the country, making it a key player in the industry. As the town grew, so did its population. Centralia was home to over 1,000 people at its peak, with families settling down, businesses thriving, and a strong community developing. Coal mining wasn't just the backbone of the town's economy, it was its identity. The residents of Centralia took pride in their work, and many of them were miners themselves, spending long hours underground. Life in Centralia was typical for a small American town. There were schools, churches, and businesses lining the streets. It was a tight-knit community where everyone knew each other, and for decades, the town thrived. However, there was an unseen danger lurking beneath the surface. Little did anyone know, the coal that made Centralia so prosperous would also be the town's downfall. By the mid-1900s, the demand for coal had started to decline, but the town carried on. Mining operations were still active, and while Centralia wasn't as booming as it once was, life went on as usual. But everything changed in 1962 when a seemingly routine decision sparked an unstoppable chain of events. So, what exactly happened in 1962 that turned Centralia into a ghost town? It all started with a fire. That year, local officials decided to burn a landfill that was located near the town's old coal mines. At first it seemed like no big deal, just a way to get rid of trash, but there was one massive problem. The fire wasn't properly extinguished. Instead, it spread into the abandoned coal mines beneath the town. Once the fire reached the underground coal seams, it became an unstoppable force. The coal veins, which had fueled Centralia's economy for decades, now became the fuel for a disaster. The fire spread underground, travelling through the interconnected tunnels, igniting coal deposits deep beneath the earth. The townspeople didn't immediately realise the severity of the situation. At first there were just small signs, smoke rising from cracks in the ground and strange hot spots in the soil. Over the next few years things got worse. The ground became unstable, with cracks and sinkholes opening up seemingly out of nowhere. Toxic gases like carbon monoxide started leaking from the earth, making parts of the town dangerous to live in. People were falling sick, the ground beneath their feet was literally crumbling, and the constant smoke became a grim reminder that the fire was still raging underground. By the 1980s, it became clear that Centralia was no longer safe. Efforts to extinguish the fire failed, and the government decided to take action. Residents were offered buyouts to leave the town, and most accepted. By 1992, the government condemned Centralia, officially declaring it uninhabitable. Most of the buildings were demolished, and the town that once thrived was reduced to ruins. But here's the truly haunting part: the underground fire never stopped. It's still burning today, over 60 years later, and experts estimate it could burn for another century. The once bustling streets are now cracked and covered in graffiti. Smoke still rises from the ground in some areas, and Centralia stands as a near-empty ghost town. Now let's talk about what really ties Centralia to the world of gaming, its connection to Silent Hill. If you've played the Silent Hill series, you know that the town in the game has a very distinctive look: foggy, desolate, and abandoned. That unsettling atmosphere is one of the game's signature features, and it turns out a lot of that eerie vibe comes directly from the real-life horrors of Centralia. The game's creators took inspiration from Centralia's haunting landscape. In both the games and the 2006 Silent Hill movie, We see eerie fog covering the town, smoke rising from cracks in the street, and an overall feeling of isolation and despair. That's Centralia in a nutshell. The constant fog in Silent Hill mirrors the smoke that still seeps up from Centralia's underground fire. It creates a sense of disconnection, almost like the town is trapped in its own world, just like Silent Hill. One of the most direct references to Centralia in Silent Hill is the idea of the underground fire. In the game, the town of Silent Hill is plagued by a dark and mysterious fire that continues to burn beneath the surface. This is clearly inspired by the fire that's been burning under Centralia for over 6 decades. The game takes it a step further, adding supernatural elements to the fire's origin, but the real-world connection is unmistakable. The Silent Hill movie, in particular, brings these parallels to life. Scenes of the town's cracked streets with smoke and steam rising from below are almost exact replicas of what you'd see in Centralia today. In fact, some of the filming for the movie was done in abandoned towns that resemble Centralia. While the film adds layers of horror and supernatural creatures, the real terror of a town slowly being consumed by an unstoppable fire is all too real. The psychological horror of Silent Hill is also reflected in Centralia's real-world tragedy. Both the fictional town and the real one are places where the past refuses to die. In Silent Hill, the town is haunted by its dark history, with each layer of fog revealing more disturbing secrets. In Centralia, the town's past as a thriving mining community is overshadowed by the ever-present danger of the fire below. It's almost like Centralia and Silent Hill are two sides of the same coin. One is a real town destroyed by human error, and the other is a fictional town cursed by supernatural forces. Both towns are isolated, abandoned, and shrouded in a fog that never seems to lift. The connection between the two is what makes Centralia so fascinating, not just to fans of Silent Hill, but to anyone interested in how real-life events can inspire some of the scariest stories we tell. So what does Centralia look like today? Well, it's not completely deserted, but it's close. Less than 10 people still live there, despite the government declaring it unsafe. Most of the original buildings have been torn down, and the streets are cracked, with nature slowly taking over what's left. One of the most famous landmarks was Graffiti Highway, a stretch of road that was abandoned and became a canvas for street artists. Unfortunately, it was recently covered up to stop tourists from visiting. Smoke and steam still rise from the ground in some areas, especially near where the fire is most active. The air in certain parts of the town is still dangerous to breathe because of the toxic gases leaking from the underground fire. It's like the town is frozen in time, forever trapped between what it once was and what it has become. Despite the dangers, Centralia has become a sort of dark tourist destination. People visit to see the remains of the town, drawn by its tragic history and its connection to Silent Hill. It's a place where reality feels more like fiction, and the line between the two blurs. Centralia may not have monsters lurking in the fog like Silent Hill, but the sense of isolation and eeriness is just as real. What if a once thriving town could turn into a ghostly, abandoned wasteland, all because of a fire that couldn't be stopped? That's the story of Centralia, Pennsylvania, a town whose tragic fate has inspired legends, stories, and of course, Silent Hill. The real-life story of Centralia is haunting enough on its own, but its eerie connection to one of the most iconic horror video games takes it to a whole new level. Both Centralia and Silent Hill are places shrouded in fog and mystery, where the past never truly dies, and danger lurks just beneath the surface. Silent Hill may be filled with supernatural terrors, but Centralia has its own terrifying reality, a fire that's been burning underground for more than 60 years, with no end in sight. The town's abandoned streets, crumbling buildings, and ever-present smoke make it feel like something straight out of a horror game. So, next time you play Silent Hill, remember it's not just a made-up town. There's a real place, right here in Pennsylvania, that inspired it all. If you're a fan of the game or just curious about this real-life ghost town, Centralia's story is worth diving into. Stick around because there's more creepy, game-inspired content coming your way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Would you ever visit Centralia, or is it too close to Silent Hill for comfort? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.